I thought I already hit that. It said streaming, so there we go. Okay. Make sure. Yeah, there we are. Okay, everyone, thanks for joining us. Technical difficulties, YouTube or something was happening, causing a really choppy, not just a beginning to the video, but the entire video, the entire live stream was basically just terrible. So apologize for that. I think I got it set up now. I fixed it, rebooted everything, and it looks smooth on our end. Go ahead and say how it looks in the chat room. Looks like, okay, people are coming back. That's good. Okay, so to recap, or to bring guys up to speed, actually, we've been talking about the creatine study that's been talked about on social media. People are losing their minds saying, hey, great, now we know creatine has nothing to do with hair loss. Not so fast. Put your brakes on there, Speedy, because it doesn't really look like that's the case based on the methodology that they used. There's some ambiguity with the information that they were discussing or not discussing, not to mention a little bit of a conflict of interest issue that you probably should know about. And we've been talking about it. Dr. Manish Mittal and I, he's live in London right now. It's almost 1 p.m. here Pacific time, which means it's almost 9 p.m. for him. He's had a long day of surgery, cranking out some more great results as he does. That's why he's a Hair Transplant Mentor accepted member. Good stuff there. We also have Spencer Coburn on the line. Like I said, we've been talking about this, and the long and short of it up to this point is there's a study that says creatine doesn't cause hair loss, or there's no real correlation there. We're questioning the outcome of that, and Spencer had some great points about that. So go ahead and condense that a little bit, or just roll back into that if you can a little bit, Spencer.
Well, first of all, you're asking a lot to condense it. But first, let me say that Manny's initial theory and just insights, I think, and again, I'm not a doctor, are completely correct. And throughout this entire, 20 some odd years or whatever, 30 years, people have been concerned about creatine. I can never make the correlation because if something isn't really affecting your hormones, if it's not increasing your testosterone and conversion to DHT, and if that's not the mechanism of creatine, then why would it exacerbate somebody's hair loss?
Right.
But anecdotally, that seems to be the case for many years. And I kind of felt it was the case for me when I was a young man. But also, the truth is, I was using it prior to my, access to finasteride. So I did notice while, minoxidil was holding things pretty good for a while, and I was able to get my hands on that finally. Once I kind of got into using creatine, of course, I was working out more. I saw a change. I stopped using it. And then once I started this career, it was just off the hook with people who were, and this is before every young guy was on PEDs and dick pills. This is when, in the late 90s, people were just, taking supplements in general, not a lot of steroid use compared to today. So, and they were concerned about that. So I just wanted to put that out there. I think what Manny said was completely accurate. And if I were to ask a doctor, and go to Manny for advice, and he told me that, I would say that makes total sense.
And I think that's what it boils down to. I think,
yeah.
Okay, I'll let Joe answer.
Yes, no. Go ahead, Manny, please.
From my perspective of things, I think anecdotally, I would agree with you. And this is what we was discussing off camera. What I find is we can call people gym bros, the people that you often see at the gym who are super jacked. And, I'd say a vast majority of them are losing hair. And a lot of that could be because they are already susceptible to developing some form of androgenetic alopecia. It's known that if you have higher levels of testosterone, even within normal parameters, and you throw off more DHT, and you are susceptible to androgenetic alopecia, then it's going to accelerate that hair loss. So generally speaking, when people are going through that sort of muscle mass building sort of phase, they will notice a bit of accelerated hair loss just in general. So I don't think that we can solely attribute it to creatine. The only problem is we've got no way of saying, hey, let's have a look at the person who was taking creatine and compare it with the same person who wasn't taking creatine and see at what point. And they do everything else the same. Yeah. They go to the gym the same way. They train the same way. They do everything the same way, and see what happens on their hair loss journey. That would be
Right.
difficult to tell. And I think from my point of view, when creatine is largely known to just retain water and to give you a more sort of jacked look as a whole, I would question how much of that is going to correlate to actual getting hair loss. But that being said, and it's what we was just discussing earlier, Spencer, and that's the long-term ramifications of taking anything that is not quote unquote specifically geared to doing something on the long term in a positive way. I worked in the hospitals and I've seen many nephrology consultants and urology consultants, and generally the overwhelming conclusion is people who do take creatine for a long period of time, it does affect their kidney function, which is why people should be cycling on and off. I'm not a nutritionalist. I'm definitely not a PT. But I would ask patients to think about how they use any medication for the short term and the long term, and just be sensible.
Yeah.
Well, and again, I know Joe wants me to keep this as short as possible, but with all of that said, this study, in my view, really doesn't prove shit. And so that's the thing. It's great. I agree with you, like I said, and I think there's really no logical reason why creatine, based on the way that we think it functions, is going to exacerbate somebody's hair loss on its own. But there is a tremendous amount of anecdotal reports. I mean, I'm talking about not just like these post-finasteride syndrome guys, not like 1,000 people or 2,000 people. Thousands of guys have reported concerns with creatine, and this is way before any type of fear-mongering.
Right.
When I see doctors go on...
Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, you go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, I think that if there is any sort of real correlation, it's not going to manifest in the traditional ways of DHT, testosterone, anything like that. I'm starting to wonder, like, just hearing what you're saying and what Manny's saying, it makes me wonder if there's something else chemically, physiologically that's happening that could relate to some sort of stress from the changes that's going on due to the use of creatine. When someone's on creatine, they might be pushing themselves harder. They might be more intense or longer session workouts.
There could be an underlying inflammatory effect that we're unaware of.
Absolutely, yeah. I don't think it's fair of us to completely dismiss the idea that creatine, that there's a correlation, but I think that maybe they should start looking at other avenues of how that could be occurring. Yeah.
But what I think is really important about this is that everyone is losing their minds over the study, and people are doing, there's like a doctor who, like, he's one of these debunking guys. He debunks all these biohackers and stuff. And some of what he says is interesting, and some of what he says isn't. And he's basically saying, the fear mongering is over now. Here's a definitive study. And I find that to be a little disingenuous, especially coming from a physician.
Right.
And maybe not all physicians really understand how these studies are conducted and how they are funded and what it means and what different, journals are and all that stuff that I was talking about before. But let me try to make this as short as possible. Let's take a look at where the study was published, first of all, right? The study was published in a journal, the Journal of the International Society of Sports Nutrition. This is what's considered a very low impact factor journal. Mm-hmm. Has about a 3.2, which is like lower than any top tier journals. And I'm not saying the top tier journals don't screw things up, because they do all the time.
Right.
But that's a very, let's put it this way, it's very easy to get published in a journal like this. The publisher of the journal itself is directly tied to the International Society of Sports Nutrition, ISSN, right? And the people that conducted the study, the doctors, in quotes, not saying they're not doctors, they are directly tied to the International Society of Sports Nutrition.
Right.
And so the entire system is funded by the sports supplement companies. Many of these companies making creatines and protein powders and stuff like that. There's not a lot of serious scientists out there, even sports medicine guys, that are going to get funded or focus on creatine studies when it comes to hair loss. That's just not something that's going to help with their long-term career as far as being publishing or perishing. type of situation. So people have to understand that as well. So a lot of these sports nutrition studies, in quotes, are just, I mean, this was a good study. It was randomized control. There was a lot of good points, a lot of good factors to it.
Mm-hmm.
I thought the design was good, but it only measured blood DHT, right? If I recall, not scalp DHT.
Yeah, correct.
There was really no clinical tracking when it came to hair shedding. There was just like hair density imaging.
Yeah.
There was no questionnaires as far as, family history, stuff like that. And the conflict of interest is really huge.
Yeah, and then
also I think,
and like you said, the relatively short duration and the lack of the lack of the saturation phase early on. There's so many points that invalidate this.
They did not. What is it called? Preload or whatever it's called. The 20 grams per day to saturate the muscles. It could take 30 days, even up to 60 days to saturate your muscles to see any kind of real change at just a 5 milligram dose a day. So by the time the study was half over, these guys didn't even have creatine saturation.
Right.
So
I think
that's
that's a very
something
valid point. I think duration is huge. Because we know that a lot of hairs, they kind of go through 90-day cycles from anagen, catagen, telogen. So 12 weeks, I mean, it's funny that they chose 12 weeks, right?
It's very funny and very coincidental.
Yeah. Very telling, actually.
Yeah. So I mean, all I'm saying is I think kids, young people, every time I have people who send me studies all the time, like, well, read this study, you're wrong about this. Whatever. I'm not here to be right. I'm here to provide the best information so people can make the most informed decisions. And if people don't understand how studies are conducted, how they're published, listen, I'm not a doctor. I can get published. That's the funny thing.
Yeah.
I can get a sponsor, get published, bring on a couple of doctors. I could have my name on a paper, depending on the journal. That's just the reality of publication. And today, just like the mainstream media, or legacy media, it's all about clicks. These companies need content. These journals, even though this is heavily funded by the industry, they depend on sponsorship to make money. They need content. And that goes for the big journals as well.
Of course.
And that's what no one really fully understands. So does creatine cause hair loss? I don't know. But does this study prove that it doesn't? In my view, absolutely not.
No, we're in my view, we're no closer to the answer than we were yesterday before people started talking about this. But what I can tell you is changing. The sales for creatine are going up, and that's most likely the intended effect. Especially,
I think it's an important supplement, especially for an older person. I'm getting to a point where forget about the muscle stuff. It would be great to have a little extra pump, but that doesn't last too long either. You can do that with carbs. But it's more about brain function and actual energy and having, increasing your energy levels so I can train, so I can go downstairs and play basketball with these kids who are, I go down to the playground. I'm like RoboCop at this point with everything I have to wear. Like my knee pads, my wristbands.
Yeah, the helmet. Yeah, we get it. We've seen pictures. Anyway, well, I think
the longevity, like Doc says, it's really important because if you start these supplements at an older age and you have normal kidney function, you're probably, how long are you going to live anyway? So you're probably not going to be that concerned about the long-term functions. Plus, you're probably going to be going to the doctor more often to get checked out anyway.
Yeah.
Kids aren't doing that. Or
one would hope. Anyway, depending on your health plan and where you live. But anyway, so look, this is, I think we've solved it, the three of us here. We've solved the mystery of the quality of the study. So anyone talking about this online, you can just reference this podcast, this live stream, because we have the answer. We figured it out. It doesn't prove anything one way or the other. And anyone that's getting super excited about this should put some ice in their shorts and relax. And just
Well, I think that's a lot to say that we figured anything out. All we did was basically.
you speak for yourself on your show, buddy. I'll speak for us on this show.
How these studies are conducted and what they can possibly mean, and Manny was able to explain, the reality that there should be no direct correlation between creatine supplementation and exacerbating male or female pattern.
No, it makes perfect sense.
There's a lot of anecdotal data showing that, for whatever reason, it happens.
Yeah,
and I think that's the key take-home message. It is anecdotal, but often, like you said before, there is no smoke without fire. So take caution whenever you're supplementing yourself with anything. Think, use your brain, and if you're going to do something, cycle on and cycle off and see what the long-term ramifications are for yourself.
In fact, I would say that the anecdotal evidence still outweighs by far the outcome of this study. So, keep that in mind as well when you're making your decision about creatine. That's my thoughts, anyway.
Well, listen, I'm glad that I caught the show. The stream looks good now. Manny's teeth are unbelievable, by the way.
They really are.
I'm going to go. I got to do my workout.
All right, man. Well, thanks for calling, and we'll talk to you later.
All right. Take care.
Thanks, Spence.
Bye-bye.
All right, so we got a couple of lines here, 1-888-491-0512. That's North America toll-free. And, of course, also in the UK, you can call 044-20-812-67771. We got someone on the line from the UK right now. What's your name and where are you calling from?
Hey, it's Kai. Can you hear me?
Yeah, sorry, what was your name?
Kai.
Sorry, are you on speaker?
Oh, I've got AirPods on. Hold on.
AirPods, yeah, if you don't mind. Kind of cuts out there a little bit.
Yeah, is that better?
Yeah, much better. Sorry, can you repeat your name one last time?
Yeah, Kai from the UK.
Are you saying Carl?
Oh, Kai.
Kai. Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
Kai. Yeah,
I called him before.
You're a little quick on the wording there. So yeah, what can we help you with?
No, so I thought I'd call in. So that's crazy. That guy that was talking about creatine. So unfortunately, I'm that anecdotal study, and so I'm currently 33 at the moment. First started losing my hair 2015. So it's been about 8 to 9 years. So I've gone from Norwood 1 to a Norwood 2. So a very thick hair. So if you saw me now, you can't really tell unless unless I slick it back. And it's just a widow's peak that I've gone.
Mm-hmm.
But the odd thing is, I can tell when I'm losing my hair because it itches on the side.
Okay.
So people call it like a DHT itch, etc. So anyway, I took creatine 2 months ago. So I started taking it, and in 1 month, I would say I probably lost about 1 year's worth of hair. So that's it affected me so much to the point I was going to bed and my scalp was so itchy, and I was looking at my hair. It was crazy amount of hair loss I had within that 1 month. So I completely came off it. The itchiness stopped, and I think the hair loss wasn't that much because my hair is so thick, but it was so scary because all it took was just one variable that I added to my routine or to my diet. And it's
how much were you taking? How much creatine were you taking? And I assume it was daily.
Yeah, it was daily at I'll take it every morning. So daily, 1 scoop, obviously the recommended scoop, nothing too crazy. But the thing is, I saw crazy results because in 1 month, I put a lot of water gain and I was looking a lot bigger because my body fat is single digits. So for me to put on any weight, it's very obvious.
Right.
So I don't know. I mean, I would be cautious.
Sounds like me.
If you
Yeah, I get it, man. I understand,
It's, no, but it is crazy because, now I can kind of understand how, nothing's guaranteed, right? All it takes is one variable that you can add to your diet, to your routine, whatever, and it can impact your hair.
It's interesting you had such an effect as far as your scalp was itchy. I mean, were you constantly scratching your scalp as well? Were you really was it irresistible? You had to scratch it?
Yeah, I didn't have to scratch it because I know there's no dandruff or anything.
But
It
you
wasn't
were.
red or anything. But I was, sorry.
But you were scratching your scalp.
No, it's very itchy to the point where I wanted to scratch it.
But you weren't. You're able to resist scratching it. Is that what you're saying?
I would, yeah, exactly.
Okay.
I was able to resist it.
All right. Well,
Obviously,
Can I ask a couple of questions myself? And firstly, I'd like to thank you for taking the time to call in and explain your story, because I think it's hugely important that people like yourself come forward and explain your journey as a whole. So firstly, I'm sorry that you've experienced the hair loss, and secondly, thank you for calling in. But I think the important things to discuss here also is your pre-creatine susceptibility to experiencing some form of androgenetic alopecia. And if you feel comfortable doing so, what's your sort of family history? Were you taking any medication to preserve your hair? Did you notice that you was going through a more stressful period in your life? Did anything else change aside from you starting the creatine? Because
no.
10 years is a long time to be taking a supplement. And secondly, a lot of men are going to experience some form of maturation to their hairline regardless. And that is very normal. That's not necessarily androgenetic alopecia. So tell me.
No, so nothing, no other variables. It was just, I didn't take it for 10 months. It was only 1 month. I took it. What else was there? Family history. Dad still got a normal 2 hair. he's receded, obviously the scalp from the back. The crown, he's receded a little bit, but I gave him minoxidil, and now he's got no hair loss because the minoxidil has worked wonders for him. Apart from that, my mom and my dad's side, there's only one person that's bald, and we have a huge lineage. But my dad's side, I have 10 kids. My mom has around 10, 12. So out of all the males, the worst case is one person that's bald. And interestingly, his kid is also bald. But then there's theory around, because he's a doctor. My dad always says, he's always stressed because he became a doctor and his kid's a doctor. So I don't know if that counts, but we don't really have any. We do have hair loss to some degree because my uncles, some of them are maybe at number 3, but no baldness at all. And I'm on no medication whatsoever because I think I tried it, to be honest. I tried taking finasteride maybe 6 years ago, 6-7 years ago. And I stopped it after the first month because the side effects were, let's just say I could feel them, and it scared me off.
When you, before or during your finasteride usage, did you experience any sort of similar issue with the scalp itching or maybe even a tenderness on your scalp?
So I never had the scalp itchiness until I took finasteride. After I took finasteride, so it's been years now, Joe. It's been I think maybe 7-6 years. The only thing that remained was now I know if I'm for example, the itchiness only occurs at the widow's peak. Why? Because that's where the hair loss is. It doesn't really occur anywhere else. It's not like the itch you get from a dandruff or anything. So I thought that was very unusual. I don't know what it is. By my body. One thing
Do you still get?
I'm very. Yeah, go on.
Do you still get the itchiness?
Yes, I get it every now and then, right? So I know my hair loss is progressing. I'm not saying it's not. It's just going very slowly. And obviously my diet is very good. I avoid sugar. The only thing I have is caffeine. That's like my. Apart from that, I avoid dairy. I mean, I eat basically, very clean diet, chicken and rice. I know.
Right.
Don't drink. So, health, diet-wise, it's pretty intact and it's repetitive in nature.
Does anything else, like when you kind of fall off the wagon, as it were, with your clean nutrition, clean diet? does that ever
Yeah.
have a similar effect? Like if you were to start eating sugar, if you start to have a few more drinks, or if you're, whatever, just something that where you vary outside of your normal routine nutrition wise,
Yeah.
there are similar effects.
Yeah. So not for sugar, it would impact my skin. That's why I avoid it.
Right.
And then if I have, obviously I don't drink anymore, but let's say I go drink maybe 2 to 3 times in a year, because it'll be like a binge session with the boys, and then the next day, my hair, I could feel it's affected it, right? So there are things that affect it, which is why I keep everything in check. And so for me, it's quite easy to tell if certain things are reacting to it in a negative manner.
Right.
And that's why I could tell with creatine straight away. Because it was unfortunate. I wanted to take it because, it's the only thing you could take that could actually see visible improvements in your physique and your strength, everything. Right. But for me, it just wasn't worth it. I mean, I like my hair too much.
Well, no, of course. I mean, we all do. But I think that it's interesting. There's a similarity of effects with your creatine usage and then your finasteride usage, and then you confirm that when you venture outside of your normal nutrition routine, you will still have similar outcomes as a result.
And it could be I'm an anomaly. So obviously, when I say these things, don't get scared of taking creatine. It's just, if you're the rare case like me, it's going to affect it.
Well, I can't speak to exactly why this is happening, because I'm not a doctor, I'm not a dermatologist or anything like that. But it just, like, I tend to break things down to just what seems logical. And you were saying earlier that you're in single digits body fat percentage, which is highly unusual. And can I assume that you maintain that level of body fat throughout the year? Are you that strict?
No, I've had that for a decade now, Joe.
No, but I mean, you keep it throughout the year. Like you don't. It's not like an on-season, off-season thing, type of thing. It's just. I think that when people have that type of physique, that type of physiology, I think that it makes them hypersensitive to any changes whatsoever. Any sort of introduction, it doesn't matter what it is, they're more likely to notice that than someone that may be, off season, on season, like I was talking about, or just a natural higher body fat percentage in general. I think that they're less susceptible to noticing. It doesn't mean it's not going on, but I think that it's a bit more padded, pardon the pun, but there's a bit more padding between the cause and effect. So it's hard to say. It's hard to say. Doc, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, look, I would agree with that. I would also say that it sounds as though whenever you try and introduce something into your routine different to what you've been taking for a period of time, you seem to develop an adverse reaction. First the creatine, then the finasteride. Does the minoxidil, the topical minoxidil that you've used, or the oral minoxidil that you've used, I can't, forgive me if I missed this, because I lost track of who was taking minoxidil in your family, but were you taking... Sorry?
No, I gave it to my dad. His Cran was receiving, and it works for him, so he was able to restore that. Speaking of minoxidil, I did try that in the past, but it gave me dandruff, so I stopped there.
Right.
So I think you've just got a very sensitive body or hypersensitive body to things that are of foreign nature to you. So I'd probably say that you are an anomaly. I think that given what you've told me in terms of your experience of using other supplementation or medication, you seem to just be a little bit hypersensitive. So I would take what you have experienced with a grain of salt. And besides, you also said that your family history suggests that most people don't go beyond the Norwood 2. So what would really be interesting is to see how you get on over the course of the next 10 years, because you said that you're at Norwood 2 right now. How much more are you going to progress? Only time will tell. And you're not taking creatine now. It could also be, go see a dermatologist, because it might be able to suffer from a bit of dermatitis, when you're describing this itchy sensation, that sounds like it's coming on and on. It could be that you're reacting to something that you're using. Could be hairspray, could be wax, could be gels, could be the soap that you're using, could be the shampoo that you're using. So I think it might be worthwhile just speaking to a doctor, get them to examine your skin, seeing if it's red and inflamed. And if it is, well, that's your answer.
Yeah. Well said.
Yeah. They're good.
Hello. Looks like we lost him.
Hello.
Oh, there you are. Yeah, you dropped out for a minute. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to say, great advice. The scalp wise, I mean, I can see it visibly that it's just not red. There's no dandruff. So, and I find it a bit unusual that it's always on, the itchiness is always on the side of the area where the hair loss is happening. But either way, I will get it checked at a dermatologist. I need to be honest with overall.
Kai, when you're scratching, you're not always just scratching one specific area. You're scratching in different areas without even realizing. And sometimes people often catch themselves playing with their hair on a regular basis. When you do that, unfortunately, you can cause a little bit of traction. And when you're causing traction, or if you're constantly scratching and so forth, that traction can accelerate and therefore cause more hair to fall out. So I would say go see a dermatologist, especially when you're experiencing an acute flare. It might be worth just having a once over and seeing what's actually going on, because this is the first time I've ever heard of this kind of a presentation of hair loss.
Yeah.
So is that unusual? I mean, I've read online, but not too much, that people sometimes talk about the DHT itch. Is that a real thing, or is that just a phenomenon? Sorry.
I would say I haven't come across it per se, so I'm not.
I have. I've had several patients, not just a DHT itch, but actually a DHT inflammation.
Right.
Anecdotally, of course, but there was visual evidence that I've seen when I used to work in clinic, where patients would come in and they would talk about how their scalp would be tender, and shortly afterwards they would start to notice some hair loss. But the question is, well, is that an effect of something that they've ingested? Is it some sort of reaction other than DHT? I mean, we don't know, because I'm not aware of any study that's really, delved into that, but I have heard of that. I've heard of itchy sensation. I've heard of burning sensation, tenderness, things like that. Not to any great degree where, they can't sleep or anything, but it's moderate, but severe enough to where they can feel it. They can notice it. So it's, it's another one of those things where it's like, well, we don't know if it's really a thing across the board, or much less what's causing it. But there was a correlation observed in some people, and I've talked to a few people who have said the same thing. But it's so vague right now.
I think you can get
with all of this?
I think you're right. When you do examine some people under magnification, I think you're right. I think you can see some DHT deposits around the hair follicles, some would argue, and that can cause a little bit of itchiness. But how much of that is DHT deposits versus natural inflammatory clogging of the specific hair follicle? I don't know. Look, honestly, mate, I don't think that this is a clear presentation of androgenetic alopecia or clear presentation of creatine, finasteride, or minoxidil related hair loss changes. I think what would be interesting to see is how you got on over the course of the next decade. If you don't progress, then you know that most of this hair loss was largely triggered by just natural maturation of the hairline, which is inevitably going to happen to most men. Every time you animate and every time you express, you're going to get a little bit of an erosion to your hairline. It is what it is.
So, Kay, sorry, Kay, I'm going to cut you off. So we're running at, it's almost 9:30 your time, 1:30 Pacific time here in Vancouver. I've had Dr. Manny here for an hour and a half now, and I'm going to go ahead and wind things down. And thank you, Kay, for calling in. Really appreciate your question and presenting your problems with us here on the main event. I will be doing the show more often. I probably this week. I don't know which days, but I am going to try and make that at the very least, a weekly occurrence. So feel free to call back in at any time. And of course, you can call the Bald Truth on Friday, a little bit later on the evening for you. Starts at 10 p.m. Current London or Greenwich Mean Time. And of course, you can call back to the main event as well next time I'm on the air. All right. So thanks so much for calling. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm glad I called you guys. Take care, all right?
All right. Thanks now. Bye-bye. Okay, everyone, thank you for sticking by and, going through this, the initial choppiness, and then coming back for this. It looks like it's fine now, so I appreciate that. I still don't know what happened. So you got a caller coming in. No, can't take your call. Sorry, guys. We're winding down. So Dr. Manish Mittal, thank you so much for coming back and being the first guest on the return of the main event. We need to do this again very soon because you're always a great guest. So I always appreciate you coming on board.
Yeah, and I'm going to be running my own podcast as well shortly, Joe. So I would love to invite you onto mine, as well as Spencer and whoever else I can find that wants to be a part of my growing thing, as it were.
100%. And it's interesting. I'm seeing finally. Because it's easier to do. I'm seeing more doctors starting their own podcast, and I think it's a great thing. So kudos to you. Thanks for doing that. Really glad to know that you're doing that, and I look forward to it. Happy to be a guest, and of course I'll be having you back on the main event sometime soon as well. So thank you so much, everyone watching. Do click the like button, please,
Thanks.
and if you haven't subscribed, do subscribe, and we'll see you next time on the main event. Take care.